The word superpower has a certain connotation to it. Once you realize there's a whole parallel world of a better way to do medicine, you can't unsee it.
$30 million Series A. Could you tell more about the round?
Every person in America will have an AI doctor in their pocket.
88% of people are metabolically unhealthy. This is the healthiest hoodie ever, correct?
It's veritably the world's healthiest hoodie garment that has ever been made. I almost lost my life due to poor health incentives. As a result of what happened to me, I have to take these things every 40 minutes. We are genuinely aligning ourselves with people and trying to help them create a sense of control, and data creates control.
Jacob Peters, welcome to the pod.
Molly, stoked to be here.
Well, congratulations on your $30 million Series A. This is huge.
It's definitely huge.
Also, I have to address the elephant in the room. This is extremely awkward. I don't know if you guys are watching online, but we're matching. We're wearing the same sweatshirt. This is the healthiest hoodie ever, correct?
It's veritably the world's healthiest hoodie garment that has ever been made. Yes.
It's lovely. I love it. Okay. Anyways, back to the fundraise. Okay. $30 million Series A. Could you tell more about the round? Who led it? What are you doing with the money?
Yeah. So something that I believe to be true is you build as big as your vision. And in the limit, we think every person in America, and frankly the world, will have an AI doctor in their pocket. And consumers will fully disintermediate the existing healthcare system as it stands. And this is already sort of happening today, right? People go to ChatGPT or Google or WebMD before they talk to their doctor. And that's a trend that's only going to accelerate. And Superpower is obviously, as we'll get into, building some interesting tools to make this future a little bit possible. So this is a really exciting milestone and an important part of the journey because, once you get past the embryonic stage and you get to a capitalization like this, capital no longer becomes quite as much of a constraint, and you have the freedom to execute. So we're currently hiring 8 engineers and building as fast as we can.
Love it. So who were the investors involved in this round? How did it come together?
So we were fortunate enough to be able to team up with Kirsten Green, who's
amazing.
The founder. Yeah, amazing. Who's the founder of Forerunner Ventures, to join the board and be a part of this round. So Forerunner was the lead investor. Almost all of our basically every single one of our major existing investors doubled down. The round was almost double oversubscribed, which
oh my gosh.
Yeah, which is 1.5 times oversubscribed. I don't want to overstate.
Okay.
Which is great. And I think just indicative of the excitement behind the tailwinds in this category. And something that, I think was particularly exciting about working with Forerunner and Kirsten is their ability to uniquely underwrite the power of brand. I think most investors and even founders or just people building companies, brand is a very mispriced concept to them. And I think in the limit, in a world where AI and vibe coding is only proliferating and making it easier to replicate products, brand is possibly one of the most powerful moats and defensible aspects of a business. And it, I think, ultimately creates higher LTV and market cap, right? Good example of this, take any commoditized product category, gyms, you have Equinox and 24-hour fitness, functionally the same underlying commoditized product, except one has a much sexier, splashier brand, a la Equinox, and they have 10x the ability to charge, right? $30 a month versus $300 a month. 3x differential in market cap of those types of companies. So brand is a very powerful thing when done right. And I think the thing that attracted me and the team to Kirsten and Forerunner the most was just their unique intersection of being a Silicon Valley, native, like tech-focused investor, but also understanding the power and the resonance of what a iconic consumer brand can become.
So can we talk more about the brand? Because you guys have done that really well. You created a little hype storm on the internet and on socials. I'm wearing the healthiest hoodie that's ever existed. It's incredibly soft, and I'm not just saying that. But could you share more about your brand strategy and how you got to that point?
I think one of my biggest learnings over the past decade in startup world is just the power of eponymous brands, right? Like meaning it is, the name is really what it sounds like. And companies like Robinhood did this exceptionally well a decade ago. They came into the market in a time, post 2008, and obviously they're a $40 billion company now, right? So something has worked. But they came into the market in a time when people are feeling super financially disenfranchised. And the brand literally stands for giving to the rich, or stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. It's all about financial empowerment, right? There's a lot of like vibe to Robinhood and the story and the ethos of the company. And they built a tool that helped people take control of their financial life and disintermediate, the traditional almost financial advisor or brokerage system. That brand has obviously hit mass market acclaim, and we kind of see there being very similar seeds right now in healthcare, right? United Healthcare CEO getting shot. People are very frustrated. You can't go more than like 7 minutes on social media without seeing something about, the Make America Healthy Again movement, nanoplastics. It's reached a boiling point. And the zeitgeist is there. It's like the perfect ripe primordial soup for, we think, a company and a brand to come in that, again, is eponymous. That is what it sounds like Superpower, where our whole ethos is to superpower people's health and help people, use healthcare as a tool to unlock a better level of human performance that they otherwise thought was possible, and give them control ultimately. So that's some of the ways that we think about brand and the intention behind the name, which was a very intentional thing. And I guess the backstory on how the name came about, this was actually branded in a pre-ChatGPT era. So I can promise you that this was all just Jacob's brain. So halfway through 2022, I put together this list, again, drawing from this power of like, well, what would an eponymous brand in healthcare look like? I wrote out like 250 statements and sentences of like things that, we could theoretically do as a company towards this goal of, enhancing people and helping with their health. And one of those statements was superpowering your health. I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting one. Of all the words and the brain dumps that we'd gotten on paper, this one really stood out because, the word superpower has a certain connotation to it. It invokes, at least in my mind, feelings of, or images and like a sense of, Captain America or, being superpowered, right? It's a very strong emotionally, connotative term. So I went out and ended up getting lucky with the way we secured some of the social assets in the domain.
Okay. What do you mean?
Which is quite a story. Because I think another thing I believe is just the power of domains.
Yeah.
And having like authority and trust and credibility from day zero. So when I realized the word superpowered was something we wanted to lean into, I went to go see if the domain was available. It was, but then it turns out it was owned by some like Singaporean private equity firm.
Superpower.com?
Superpower.com. Yeah, it was, no one had owned it. So I inquired, went through this whole rigmarole for months and months, tracked down like a domain holding company, but they had some contract with another holding company in Singapore. So they didn't actually own the domain, even though they said they did. So it was just this multi-month long process where I was on the phones, probably sunk way too much time into this, to eventually track down the domain, put together a deal. And we ended up buying it for actually only a few $100K, but believe it or not. Yeah. And I've been offered over $2 million for it by a well-funded AI company, which I will not name.
Do you also have superpower.ai, or is that in your shopping cart?
So fun story there. When we got the $2 million offer to sell the domain to this other well-funded AI company about a year ago, I realized, okay, they're probably going to try to rebrand to Superpower anyway. So I went out to try and get superpower.ai, and then I also went and filed a trademark for anything superpower and AI related.
Really?
So I called my IP attorney on like a Sunday morning, and he's, in Nantucket, with his family. And he's like, why are you calling me? I don't work on weekends. And I'm like, and obviously, that whole world's probably very different than us, where it's a 7-day week job. But I get him to, pull up in his computer, go home from the beach and file like a whole, basically trademark request for us that weekend for all things superpower and AI related. And I kid you not, the next day on Monday, that company that tried to acquire our domain filed the patent or the trademark for the same concept.
Oh my
but I
God.
got there 24 hours before. Yeah. So eventually, when it gets to approval, we can dispute and we'll win that, obviously, because we got there first. So that's a lesson in the power of speed. And they ended up rebranding not to Superpower because we turned down their domain requests and got the .ai. But the more interesting part of the story was actually how we cobbled together the complete universe of social handles. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like Pokemon, right? You go from Charmander to Charmeleon to Charizard. If you're trying to, evolve your Pokemon, it's like we went from, the domain to the Twitter handle to the Instagram. Like we wanted to have the complete stack. Got to catch them all. So, the Twitter handle was a fun one because we got at Superpower on Twitter. It was owned by a guy who had written like an energy book 25 years ago, something on like clean energy, pre Tesla days. And so I went on Amazon, bought his book, sent him an email with a screenshot being like, hey man, I read your book, thought it was really great. And I'd love to buy your domain. Here's some of the things I want to do with it. And he replied back, thank you so much for being magnanimous and buying my book. It's not really selling that well anymore. And as a thank you, because I could totally extort you, because it sounds like, you're going to be capitalizing this company, I'm going to give you the account for free.
Oh,
I'm not going to charge you. And he changed the password to go change the world, don't be an asshole.
Wow.
Like a 29 character string. And I was like, okay, at that moment, like the company is born. Like that was the moment I realized the power of the mission that we are invoking. It's not just the name, it's the mission of the company. So we're not just an eponymously branded company that makes you feel something. We also have a story behind the company and a story behind, the hoodie and all the things that we put out into the world, which we'll get into in a second. So it was really that moment that I realized the power of the mission that we were getting behind, where I could have easily, been extorted for $50,000, by this guy for his Twitter handle. But he's like, no, I resonate so much with what you're doing. Just take it for free and go change the world.
I hope you gave him some advisor shares or something.
I should email him back and get him a free membership.
Yeah, and a hoodie.
Yeah, and a hoodie. That's great.
Give back.
Stay tuned for part 2. And then the Instagram was the craziest part, maybe the craziest part of the lore here of completing the package in the brand universe. So the owner of @Superpower on Instagram was the founder of the Kuwaiti equivalent of DoorDash. So I ended up calling a bunch of his restaurants, using some social engineering to track down his personal WhatsApp number. To get him on a thread. And he was just like not interested whatsoever to sell. He's like, I like my username. I don't need the money. Basically go screw yourself in a nice way. So what we ended up having to do over the course of the next 2 years was, continue to massage that relationship. And I eventually got a colleague of ours, so a member of our team who was in Dubai at the time, to fly to Kuwait.
Whoa. You have a team member in Dubai that went to Kuwait.
Yes. Yeah. He was visiting Dubai from the US over the holidays to see some family. Mm-hmm. And we get him to hop on a flight to Kuwait to go meet this guy for lunch. So we coordinate a lunch meeting. And in the meeting, again, it shows you the power of the mission. Anytime you're able to make a face-to-face, connection and relationship, it obviously changes the game versus just some faceless WhatsApp connect. So we got him bought into this idea that, him helping us complete the brand universe is a powerful stepping stone to improving humanity. And, as soon as someone feels like they're part of the story, it changes the negotiating landscape. So we ended up, figuring out the right financial arrangement that was workable, and getting him to offer to work on the handle with us. So we ended up securing him the full brand universe, and I guess all it took was probably 50 hours of negotiations and tactics across these 3 different things. The domains, the Twitter and the Instagram, a trip to Dubai, purchasing a book, negotiating with a Singaporean private equity firm, and we got it done.
That is commitment, relentless execution, and long-term vision. Very impressive.
Yeah. And fun fact, my dad was in the U.S. military and used to serve. He served in Operation Desert Storm before I was born. In Kuwait. So it was a fun story for him too, to tell him that we made things full circle and got the domain from a Kuwaiti.
Going global.
Let's talk about the hoodie.
I want to talk about the hoodie. Can you just explain this? Because I think it was a very strategic and interesting. I love merch. Merch is great. We just had Ariel Zuckerberg on. She also loves merch. Merch is really important. But you created like a social wave with the hoodie, and you strategically did it with certain people. I'm very happy I got early access to it. Thank you very much. I got a couple people to buy it because I'm just so influential. But could you just share more about it?
Molly, you're an influencer. Okay. So something we think a lot about internally is this idea of concavity versus convexity, right? So a concave curve, the first part of the parabola, it basically, the idea of concavity basically states that if you make something, 9 out of 10 versus 8 out of 10, you're going to get diminishing marginal returns from additional unit of time. So we didn't want this to just be another merch drop. In fact, I don't even consider it merch. I consider it like an extension of the soul of the company, and an opportunity to give people a sense of identity when they are, joining the superpower community. So, with that in mind, we actually started with the narrative and the story before we even got into the physical product. And there's this bigger idea of just how, the institutions that be, everything from like, pharmaceutical industry and incentives to the problems in the food supply chain, agriculture, big chemical, are very relevant and topical for people right now, and it's not quite yet as prevalent in our understanding of clothing. So we started this narrative like clothing might be making us sick. The clothing industry is broken, and here is just a complete antithesis to that. It's literally like the healthiest hoodie ever made. And you might think hoodies, which are nice and snuggly and comfortable, are good for the soul, but they might actually be perniciously impacting you if they have a lot of toxic
microplastics.
Dyes. Yeah, exactly. Polyester, these things, they basically leach, nanoplastics that literally get inhaled as you, move the fabric. So it's just not so great. So we started with a story. So we didn't actually sell a hoodie or drop a hoodie as much as we dropped a story and a vibe and something that people could associate as part of their identity and tell a story about, right? It's not just, hey, I'm wearing this hoodie and it says a brand on it. It's no, there's a story behind this hoodie. So we're selling a story, and that's what enhanced the virality of it.
Every detail of Superpower is super intentional and also quite intense. Like, I think that's very commendable and very interesting. Not many companies have that kind of commitment to it.
Or convexity
to the brand. And the brand is important. The story is important. You guys are dedicated to the story. I know the start of Superpower is actually a very personal story for you. I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing about it, but I'd love to learn more about your personal story and journey and how it led to founding the company. So
before I get into the story, and you'll see why we're doing this, as a result of what happened to me, I have to take these things like every 40 minutes or every few hours. It's an electrolyte shot, and I'm going to make you share one with me. Here.
Really?
Yeah.
I love taking
Okay. It's called Quinton.
Okay.
We sell them on the Superpower marketplace. And it's Spanish seawater.
Okay.
So the way this works is you break open one end of it. It's glass ampule.
Do I have to
cut yourself.
Okay.
So you hit it really hard. Yeah, there you go. And if you spin it upside down, the water's not going to fall out because gravity will, do its thing. But it's from an aquifer in Spain, and pretty much like untouched by humans, so no contamination or toxins. And there's a plankton and algae population in this water body that has resulted in the water being very trace mineral rich and nutrient dense. So the trace mineral content in this electrolyte shot actually like very closely mimics the natural trace mineral composition found in like our blood albumin. So more or less what that means is like it's really good for you. It's very hydrating, mineral rich, and you can even use it as like saline. Like I've gotten IVs of this stuff.
Really?
Before. Yeah.
Is it expensive?
Really cool. It's a little expensive. These things cost like $1 or so an ampule. But if you break the other end and put it in your mouth, you'll get like an immediate electrolyte boost.
I'm not that strong.
Yeah. There you go. A little salty.
Definitely very salty.
Very salty, but very hydrating.
Very refreshing.
Yeah.
Very refreshing. It complements the liquid death.
There we go. It complements the liquid death. And the reason I have to take this is because I actually don't have a large intestine, which in the primary function of the large intestine, is number one to like hold a stool, but then number two is in your bacterial population, but it's also to regulate electrolytes. So, not to be too graphic, but we run a healthcare company, obviously, but it's the reason why your stool is supposed to be a little hard, is because your body is actually pulling water out to rehydrate the rest of your body and calibrate your electrolyte balance. So I'm sort of like missing that entire process within my body because I almost lost my life due to just a handful of intricate poor health incentives and healthcare failures, which ultimately is what catalyzed the company. So this is something that I have to do as a personal practice to maintain my hydration and my sanity. And it's not that fringe. A lot of like Olympic athletes and triathlon and marathon runners will do this stuff rather than carrying around a big flask of water. They'll just have a few, electrolyte vials with them to rehydrate. Yeah,
much more efficient.
Yeah. So in my case, I'll be brief with the story, but the TLDR was, prior life, I started a multi-$100 million software company in my early 20s. And I made the classic mistake of putting the pursuit ahead of health foundation, which is something that I think far too many entrepreneurial and ambitious people do because you just don't know any better, right? And in my case, I wasn't sleeping properly. I kind of lacked the tools to take control and know what was happening in my body, number one, but also number two, like deal with hard things. Now I have like a much different perspective on stress and the ability to reframe. And I've, done a lot of work on, I guess, like the subconscious patterns that run my life in order to, deflect and better calibrate myself when stressors do emerge, because building a company is just like the ultimate Herculean task. So that was something I lacked in it. Obviously, it caught up to me, got stuck in the hospital for many months, had to get a handful of surgeries, and obviously lost part of my stomach. And the core reason for this comes down to health system incentives. So in America, close to 85% of health system revenue comes from two sources. Do you know what those are?
Tell us.
Pharmaceuticals and surgery. So most health systems and hospitals have vertically integrated infusion centers, pharmacies, so they're capturing margin on the pharmaceutical side of things. And then they also have surgical centers, right, where they perform surgery. Like if you have gallstones, the main protocol is typically get your gallbladder removed, right, which is a nice, probably $100,000 billable event, plus all the post-op care and follow-up visits, versus recommending something that might be a little bit of a more of a holistic root cause approach to understand, well, why are there gallstones forming in your gallbladder, instead of just saying, well, let's cut it out as a solution. So again, this is an example of where the incentives are misaligned. So in my case, with a hyperinflamed colon, dealing with autoimmune disorder, Crohn's disease was my diagnosis. Never once was there an attempt to understand the root drivers of what results in disease. And this is one of the flaws of the myopic specialized system we have today, where everything in medicine is relegated to organ system specialists, right? Or doctors who have to go through a lot of advanced training to become, a cardiac expert or an endocrinologist, or a gastroenterologist, versus taking a step back and looking at the whole system holistically and figuring out, well, where are things going haywire systemically or cellularly versus, just looking at your aspect of health in a silo. And in my case, because to hammer everything's a nail, the gastroenterology team that I was being seen by, they were effectively, willfully ignorant to things that were happening in other parts of my body, because all they look at is that one, organ system or aspect of you. So the fuller picture was missed as to what was driving, the diagnosis in my case, which was probably, some combination of dysbiotic microbiome, too high of a toxin load, a dysregulated central nervous system, mitochondria that were impaired in their functioning, nutrient imbalances, a few genetic mutations that gave me a few predisposals, which you can mitigate with the right supplement and lifestyle strategy. And that was never considered. It was only, well, you have this presentation, our intervention that is, FDA approved and considered standard at the hospital and it's going to bill us the most money is this surgery or this, TNF alpha immune system modulator, which is called a biologic drug. It's a class of biologic drugs that modulate your immune system. They make they generate like 15K a month, and you are on them for life typically. So very good business model if we look at it from that perspective. So those were the only solutions afforded to me, and never once were they trying to uncover the root cause of what happened, as opposed to when I got out of the hospital and discovered the world of concierge medicine, where if you have capital and you're in the know in America or in the world, you can basically get access to a private medical system or private health system where you can work with doctors who are not accepting insurance, pay all cash, and they will look at you holistically because they've been trained in what's called like functional medicine or holistic medicine or cellular medicine, where they don't just look at, again, specialties in a silo. They consider the unified view of everything that's happening and how all the interconnected all the different problems are interconnected to get the root cause of what's ultimately driving your disease, and then systematically checking the box on each of those in order to get you back to full health and peak state. So that was what happened to me. And it obviously inspired the company, because once you realize there's a whole parallel world out there of a better way to do medicine that is holistic, that isn't reactive, that considers the full picture, that considers the complex interactions among different organ systems and cellular processes that drive disease or make you not feel as good as you are, you can't unsee it. And it became very obvious, being a technologist and a brand builder, that there was an opportunity to basically productize this model and take what the best physicians in the world have figured out and turn it into code, number one. And number two, wrap it in a brand, in a story, in a mission, in a narrative, in a fight against the incumbent forces and misincentives that be in healthcare, to ultimately change the status quo of health in America, eventually the world, when we go global, when we go to Kuwait. And that's what birthed the company.
Wow. That is, well, I'm happy that you're doing well and you're healthy. I can't imagine how hard that journey must have been and how frustrating it would be to have to go through all of that and reveal that, oh, you actually don't have to take the hard route that would cut you open and do all of these things, but take a holistic route. And you're young too, like you're fairly young, and that is a systematic problem in the US. Being misdiagnosed or being diagnosed early on with something and getting all of these practices put on you that might actually affect you for a really long time, and not know how to treat it or go more natural path, functional path, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's, if we just think about it from first principles, the body's a system. So why is medicine not holistic and consider things as a system? It really comes down to actually the constraints of, I think two things. One is that the medical paradigm was architected in a world where our understanding of science was much more limited. And if we go back to this idea of, convexity, I think we are now, especially in 2025, at the beginning of the exponential jump of the J curve, where human knowledge about science and how the body works is only exponentially compounding. Meaning that, gap between the understanding of the world when the medical system was created and what we know about science now is only exponentially growing. And that's obviously a really big gap. But number two, it's actually the fact that we are constrained by the limitations of the human brain and our ability to compute. Because what is a doctor really doing? If you break their job down into like into a really simple view, they're computing between a few databases. They're basically, healthcare is a doctor's job is an informatics problem, right? You're computing between, when you're a doctor and you go see a patient, you're computing between a database of what you know about a patient, what you know about medicine, and what interventions you have in your toolkit. And you're just triangulating between those three different databases, right, to ultimately help treat the patient. And that's overly simplistic, right? Obviously, there's a lot of circular references and things that get really complicated, but at a very simplistic level, that's like the basic computation of medicine and of healthcare. That obviously means we're constrained by what humans can compute with. So that is why, we have architected this system where people specialize in each of the different, aspects and organ systems or, specialties of health and modern medicine today, because you can only learn so much. It's really, really tough to be as deep in cardiology as you are in endocrinology or gastroenterology or, neurology or any of these other specialties. But with the advancement of foundation models, compute is no longer a constraint in medicine, which has opened up this market opportunity and this portal for healthcare to really be built as a product. And for us, if it is an informatics problem, and compute is now a solved problem, then theoretically there's an opportunity to build a new medical paradigm from the ground up that does not rely on specialties and does not rely on a system that was created when our understanding of science was much more nascent, and does not rely on the constraints of the human mind and its ability to compute and only store so much medical information. And that is the kind of wave that we are riding and building upon it. That Superpower is a paradigm in which AI solves a lot of those problems.
I think that's a great answer for why now. I want to share a couple stats and data points because I'm always shocked by this, and I revisit this a couple times every now and again. Okay, so you share a couple of stats in the Superpower manifesto that I think are just really glaring. And then I'll share some more from Casey Means because, wow, oh my gosh. So 88% of people are metabolically unhealthy.
Yes.
8,000 chemicals exist in the US food supply
that don't exist in Europe.
Obesity rates have more than tripled since 1960. Americans put on an average of 168 chemicals on their bodies each day. Oof. Female infertility is at record highs. Male testosterone and sperm count are at record lows. Okay, now we go to Casey Means. Oh my gosh, these ones are pretty scary too. 74% of adults are overweight or obese. 50% of kids are overweight or obese. And by the way, 120 years ago, there were no cases reported, so it's very crazy. 77% of adults are unfit to serve in the military. 50% of adults in the country have prediabetes or type 2 versus 1% in 1950s. 30% of teens have prediabetes. Wow, that sounded really fancy.
And part of this is we have better telemetry now and ability to measure this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still damning.
Oh, it's
hugely damning.
I mean, you could see it. You could see it anywhere. Go walk around the airport or something.
Yeah.
People don't look well.
They don't look well. And this is, part of the beyond my personal story, and maybe they're interrelated, but just the why behind why we're doing what we're doing. It's the number one thing we screen for as a company is mission obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I literally go to the airport, I flew into LA the other day. I see people who clearly have fatty liver, clearly have way too high of a toxin load, clearly have, cortisol and just too much inflammation in their face, or that, they're not metabolically healthy, and you can tell it visually. It just makes me viscerally sick.
Yeah.
Like literally, I genuinely feel sick in my body, sick from empathy for these people. And it's such a systematic challenge. And, beyond a product with Superpower, we're trying to, offer a message, and sell hope, really, right? And and sell is even the wrong word. It's more just we are genuinely aligning ourselves with people and trying to help them create a sense of control, and data creates control.
So we have Make America Healthy Again, Maha, Brian Johnson, and more of these kinds of brands and advocates that are sharing stories. They're sharing actual discrepancies in the systems and what actually might be the root cause of what's going on. Can you just explain, what do you think the biggest failures of traditional medicine are? And maybe could you explain how Superpower is attacking all of those at once and what you're offering to the user?
Again, we've touched on a few key themes during this chat. The power of brand, and storytelling, and mission-driven, the mission-driven nature of a company and how powerful that can be. Convexity. You build as big as your vision. And I'd add another, which is, the team you build is the company you build, right? Almost close to a dozen of our founding team members. Hannah, who runs design, shout out Hannah. Max, who is my co-founder. Kevin, my other co-founder, and our CTO. All former venture-backed founders. And they've all seen some shit.
Yeah.
or just like know what it's like, to eat glass and have to go through, the tough motions to birth something into existence. So if the teams you build is the company you build, and we've set this, again, convex bar for talent, where someone who is a 9 out of 10 hire, a 10 out of 10 hire teammate, is going to be exponentially better than a 7 or 8 out of 10 person. And we're building a team of this caliber because the mission demands it. Then ultimately the company you build will be a function of that initial DNA and that initial starting group. So beyond getting too tactical, I would just say, look, any company can take any number of directions over months and years. A roadmap can change and be flexible. But the reason we believe we'll earn the right to build an enduring company that outlasts all of us, and a brand and a product that really helps people with health, is that we started with the right people around the table, and we'll continue to attract that. The other lens I'd add is just the flavor of the skill sets of the team. So we're certainly, I think, a much more Silicon Valley native, like, product and engineering org than anyone else who's really circling the healthcare space. And in healthcare, typically, I think you have healthcare insiders or experts who team up with technologists to build their company. That's kind of been the paradigm of building healthcare and digital health for the past few years. I think we've yet to see a very engineering native team. Like, our entire engineering team is former like dev tools, like Y Combinator dev tools engineers as an example, teaming up with the health subject matter experts in the scientific community to build something. And that's just again a very different flavor of initial company DNA that will ultimately help us flex into a direction where we're building like a much more unique and differentiated product experience than anything else out there that exists. So what we're trying to reverse engineer is the patient experience you get at a high-end concierge clinic. So when you go to one of these clinics, they basically do three things really, really well. Number one, they centralize all your data and test your whole body, right? So they don't leave any stone unturned. They'll look at everything from like genome to microbiome. They'll call every doctor that you've ever visited throughout your life to centralize all your medical records and put it all into nice one big file for you with a bow. We basically do all that automatically and at super low cost, because we get the volume discounts of doing it with scale and automation. Second is the really good doctors will help you make sense of all that data. And the more prolific ones, the more complex doctors that I've worked with, they will actually spend like 3 or 4 hours with you on a whiteboard, connecting the dots across everything that's happened in your health. Were you born C-section or vaginally, because that can impact your microbiome from birth, all the way to, did you have mono or Epstein-Barr virus before age 14, because that can permanently alter your DNA and your immune system? How did your grandparents die? Do you have an afternoon slump? What gene mutations do you have? What's your estrogen level? All these things matter. And it's really tough today to try and triangulate insights from all that data to get an understanding of, what is your health today? Why is it that way? And what is your trajectory ultimately? And how far off are you from your baseline of what could ultimately have you feeling an order of magnitude better, which most people don't even realize is possible, because our brain is so good at acclimating to the baseline,
totally,
right? That we don't realize.
I just feel like this every day.
Yeah,
Why do I need to change anything?
You don't realize it's actually mediocre relative to how you could feel. And as soon as you start to make some of these changes, you can't unsee, right? Or you can't unfeel that lens. But that's step 2. So we make sense of all of that. And obviously in a human brain constrained medical paradigm, it costs $50,000 to $100,000 to get that level of insight and access and time and intention with a really smart person who's a scarce resource, because there's only so many of those really smart, prolific, convex doctors, so they can charge a lot of money. We can obviously replicate that with AI, or at least enough of it where it's meaningful and insightful. So that's step 2 in what we do. So that's basically, to sum that up, it's a system of record, right? All your data, a system of intelligence, so mimicking the brains of the world's best doctors. And then we're 3, on the member experience, is a system of action, where we're actually building tools, software, a marketplace of healthcare services and products to put all of the things you need to do for your health into practice. Because today, healthcare is just like very fragmented and hard to access. So we wrap all of this in a membership that today looks, a little bit like test your whole body, centralize your data, get insights on what's happening, and then have tools to take action. And for most people, even the base version of what we built today is exponentially better than anything they've ever had, because we test about like 10 times more labs than your traditional annual physical, which is very lacking relative to what
are those
we should
labs,
be doing.
just so people can understand?
Thyroid, which, you know, is really, really important for your metabolism and the state of your body. Metabolic health, getting ahead of cardiac problems. AZ on your pod last week was talking about lipoprotein A and it being elevated. This is a super important marker that basically means you have a genetic predisposition to things like heart attacks and strokes that you might be completely unaware of because it's never tested for in a traditional annual physical. Toxins, nutrient statuses like zinc, which, you know, are very important for things like proper hormone production. Hormones is another one. So we really look at the full picture, and all these things I'm mentioning are basically not checked in a traditional annual panel, which is only really looking for the presence of active disease. Like, do you have immediate risk of death, heart attack, stroke,
What's your
or
blood
diabetes?
pressure?
Exactly. What's your blood pressure, right? So it's very limited and very, 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 very limiting.
Right. I think I want to understand a little bit more on the onboarding process and what it's like for a user. So if they're coming to superpower.com, what do they start to do immediately? Actually, you know what? You guys have a large wait list. Let's talk about that. I think last time I checked, it was over 100K people on the wait list. So can you talk about how you've accrued? I think we know that. So like you have a big brand and that kind of thing, but how are those people that are getting off the wait list, how do they get funneled into the beta or the real product? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, we start by getting all your past data. So we pull in your medical records. We ask you a lot of questions to make sure we really know you. And, you know, this is the problem with, I think, a lot of testing companies today, is they just kind of give you these cookie cutter insights versus taking into account, you know, some of the things I mentioned earlier that are really important, right? That status of potentially your microbiome. Did you have a lot of antibiotic usage as a kid? All these things really impact us permanently. And it's important to know that. So we capture all that data. We send you to a local partner lab. We have locations with partners in most major cities, or we can send a nurse to your house, which most people
prefer. And do you just like pick and choose from different things to test, or you recommend?
Yeah, we have a standard panel. We have a standard suite
Mm-hmm.
of panels that, again, is more comprehensive than your annual physical. And then most members add on things like a microbiome test or toxin testing or cancer screening, which if you're over 35, probably good to do at least every 5 years, you know, based on our Superpower research team.
Do you have one of those full body scans?
We're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are cool.
Yeah. And yeah, your results come back pretty quickly. And we use a team of AI plus humans to help you make sense of all this and give you a software product that and a dashboard and a platform that synthesizes everything, makes it easy to digest and easy to take action from.
I've been involved in functional medicine and health for a while. When I was younger, my mom had thyroid cancer. So I've been seeing a doctor for this for a while, because then it made me neurotic. And then now I'm obsessed with health. And so I've tried everything out there. Like I've tried like, you know, using a traditional concierge doctor to going online and doing it myself. And I much prefer that because now I'm neurotic and I like to take control. But there are plenty of other...
You're not neurotic, you're proactive.
Thank you. So there are a couple other companies out there like Function and Parsley Health and specific ones. So how does Superpower differentiate itself against those and the competition? If
you truly have a vision for a company and a brand that you think will outlast you, then you reframe competition as the only competition is the task itself, because what you're trying to do is fundamentally so hard. And one of my co-founders, Max, and I, shout out Max.
Shout out Max.
Shout out Max.
Wish you were here.
He should be right here next time. You know, when him and I were thinking about working together, we had this interesting conversation of, you know, what's one of the most ambitious things we could do in this lifetime, either separate or together. And we came to this conclusion of, well, you can either build a city or a new healthcare system. Both just like hugely daunting, complex, and multidimensional tasks, endeavors. And we decided to start with the latter, which is the healthcare system, which, you know, in any big city, you have a healthcare system, or, you know, local health system. So the way I think about competition is, because we're thinking so big with where we want to take the company, I'm not even concerned necessarily with what anyone else is doing today because I'm taking the multi-year and multi-decade view.
Focused on the mission.
Focus on the mission. And then our other co-founder, Kevin, he hails from Amazon in a prior life. So he brings a lot of, Bezosian philosophies. Shout out Jeff.
Let's get Jeff on the pod.
Into the business as well. So for us, we kind of have blinders on when it comes to everything else that's happening in the market. So focus on the mission, focus on the customer, build the best product. And longer term, from the foundation that we're building on, there's a lot of interesting business models that get unlocked.
Yeah.
Some companies that I do look up to are, and again, some of the biggest companies in America, United Health and Kaiser. And what makes them really special is they are known as what's vertically integrated payviders, meaning they have a healthcare provider, so like the doctor, combined with the healthcare insurer, which is the payer. And in that model, you can unlock a lot of synergies. For obvious reasons. So, because of the model and the data-driven health platform that we're building with Superpower, longer term, one day, I believe this will give us a unique underwriting advantage because of the data that we are accumulating to be able to build a similar type of business, whether it's vertically integrated in-house, joint partnership, or something. I think that because today, you can't really get anything that's outside the norm. Again, the pharmaceutical, the surgery, the insurance reimbursed simple physical lab tests, which are very subpar as we've established, covered, and you have to pay cash or out of pocket. We're going to see this decoupling where I think people are going to be okay paying for emergency health insurance, but then there will be different new innovative models to help cover the fact that there are a lot of things that move the needle on health that today you have to do completely out of pocket. And it's TBD exactly what and how this is gonna look, but that's one of the big angles that we're thinking about is what does the biggest consumer health company in the world look like, and it's probably some combination of becoming the fintech layer and owning the insurance and the underwriting, the ability to actually cover and figure out the risk of how do different interventions and proactive health measures and things you do to take control ultimately in a cost-effective way help both your bottom line and the patient and the member that you're trying to serve. So
how does the business model work today?
So today it's a membership. So people join Superpower. It's $1,500 a year. And they get access to the platform twice a year, full body testing, so that there's, again, never any gaps of understanding in terms of what's ultimately happening in your body. And, because we have a marketplace and an ecosystem of referral partners, there's, quite a lot of monetization opportunities as well. And we want to be very incentive aligned with anything that we are recommending. So trust is sort of like the tantamount North Star internally that we orient every product decision around. It's just maintaining member trust. Like people are truly, we revere the fact that people are entrusting us with their life and with their health.
So Jacob, we've covered pretty much everything I could think of. To close it out, I want to know what you're most looking forward to this year.
I'm just most excited about getting the product in the hands of the people who need it most. In a few years, we're going to have millions of Americans superpowering their health. And we finally have the capital, the team, the partners, and the right primordial soup to do it. So couldn't be more stoked to be serving this mission.
Amazing. Great way to end it.
Thanks, Molly.